Italy's Amalfi Coast is home to colorful little towns and villages, stunning beaches, beautiful hikes, and delicious seafood. It is one of my favorite places that I've ever visited, and it is also one of the few places that I visited where I genuinely thought I might die. Hey, Jessie here from Jessie on a Journey, coming to you with another travel story, this one focused on the kindness of strangers, like my last one, which I will link in the description of this video. Now, before I dive into the story, I just want to direct your attention to the description of this video, where I've shared a link to my Beyond the Guidebook travel newsletter. This newsletter is for travelers who want to go beyond their guidebooks to experience places beyond just sightseeing and checking attractions off their list. I've also shared a link to my free travel personality quiz. This is a free and fun quiz where you'll just answer a few questions and then you'll be told what your perfect trip style is. In your results, there will also be recommendations for unique travel experiences. So feel free to pause this video to go grab those. And when you are back, we will dive into the story. Now, when I visited the Amalfi Coast, I was with my now fiance, and we decided to stay in a town called Vietre sul Mar. It's not one of the main towns, but it had a really beautiful Airbnb with a balcony and a gorgeous sunset view, which was really the reason that we chose it. This part of the town was pretty remote. There were, I believe, 2 restaurants in town, and it was pretty quiet. So one day we did the Path of the Gods hike, really amazing. And by the time we got back, it was probably about 7 p.m. Being from New York, we totally forgot to really check about restaurants being open and things like that. But by the time we did get back, the 2 restaurants were closed. We were pretty hungry after a day of hiking, and we looked on Google Maps and we saw that there was an area that had restaurants open. I can't quite remember if it was in Vietre sul Mar or a different village or whatever, or town, but there was an area in the Amalfi Coast that still had restaurants open, and it seemed like, still lively over there. We decided, on Google Maps it says it's about a 30-minute walk. That's no problem. It's a nice night. We'll enjoy the walk. So we start walking, starts out great, a nice balmy night. We're chatting about our amazing hike, walking hand in hand, enjoying the romance of the place. When it came to a point that I kind of didn't realize where we were, we had started walking on the highway. And maybe at the time I thought that it was just gonna be a really quick walk on the highway. I can't quite remember that part. Anyway, we're walking and suddenly we find ourselves really in the thick of highway traffic, zooming in the Amalfi Coast, so fast and so close that my skirt is blowing up from each car. Now, if you've never been to the Amalfi Coast, picture NASCAR, but on skinny little streets that also have pedestrians, and it really can be harrowing, especially driving, but also walking on the highway. So we're doing this. It's pitch black out. We can't turn back because we get to a point where we realize it would be more dangerous to turn back because then our backs will be to the cars. So we decide to get our cell phones, turn the flashlights on to the brightest setting, and just walk, holding the flashlight, hoping that people will see us. We walked for at least 20 minutes. Bodies pressed up against this kind of wall that was on the side of the highway, just flashing our flashlights. We do eventually make it to this area where there are restaurants. I kind of throw myself on the ground and kiss it, and we get to a restaurant. First thing I do is I say, before we sit down, we would just want to make sure that in an hour or 2, we will still be able to get a taxi back. We kind of tell him, we just walked. It was not, it was not good. And he's like, why would you walk that? So anyway, he says okay about the cab. So we sit down to an amazing meal. Definitely got wine with that one because I was definitely shaking. And then, the seafood and the spaghetti and clams and the mussels and all this great stuff. And then we're done. We ask for the check and for a cab. So the waiter says, no problem, goes to call a cab and comes back and tells us that there are no more cabs for the night. No joke. We were considering sleeping on the ground. We jokingly asked the waiter if we could just sleep at the table for the night. And he, he could see that we were quite panicked. So he goes, you know what? Give me a sec. I'll be right back. Goes away, comes back, and says, my cousin will pick you up. Perfect. Is he a taxi driver? Oh no, he's just bored and has nothing to do and can pick you up. Now, I don't usually hitchhike. I live in New York. That is just not something that you would do. That's not something that would even ever be offered to you as an option. But if it was, I, wouldn't do it. So there were some red flags here for me, but when we talked about it, we realized that it would be riskier to actually try what we had tried to get to this restaurant and walk on that highway again with all those cars. So we agreed. Now, I would be lying if I said that I wasn't hand on the car handle, ready to pull it open and roll out if needed. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching the guy's hands the whole time. And I would be lying if I said my phone wasn't pre-dialed to the emergency number. But in actuality, this guy was genuinely just someone who was kind enough to use his free time to drive two strange tourists back to their Airbnb. And honestly, it was a situation I wish we didn't get into, but at the same time, it really was a beautiful reminder about the kindness of strangers and how giving people can be. I live in New York, and while people here are definitely kind and not as mean as the stereotype says by a long shot, you really don't have your waiter telling you that their relative is going to drive you home, especially if you are a stranger. Plus, living in New York City, when I'm here, I'm in my routine. I don't really get into situations too often where I need a stranger's help. Whereas, when you're traveling and you're unfamiliar, it's just, I feel more likely that those things kind of happen. So it was just a great reminder of the fact that we are all connected and just that people can be really selfless, and it is a beautiful thing. Now, if you have a kindness of strangers story of your own, I would love to hear it in the comments. I feel like reading these types of stories is always so uplifting and inspiring. And if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when future videos publish. Happy trails!